So I find it ironic or interesting or both that the letters are the same in the word own and the word won, as in won the game. So today I'm talking about the chances that you've owned something, if you've won something, or vice versa, are pretty high percentages. And so I'm going to title this One and Only. One, WON, and only, OWNLY. And so the point of this is to really pretty self explanatory, but I'll go into it is that we've got a society that's really unwilling to own anything that's inconvenient or anything that isn't in their favor. And we struggle to own things that we make mistakes on or places we fail. So, but to to consider the battle to have been won, I believe we have to own everything within our sphere, within our capability, within our responsibility. Ownership takes on many forms, many meanings, looks different for certain people, but it is a dying breed from what I can tell. Taking ownership of our actions, our decisions, our thoughts, our words, mistakes, failures, victories, defeats. I believe taking ownership of that is something that should just be woven into our DNA. And I believe it is. I believe God created us that way. But we've got a society now that definitely points the finger, definitely passes blame and passes the buck. You can look no further than the White House, in fact. Won't get into that. But let's kind of move right into this. But I believe a battle's won because a battle's owned. I believe if you're owning the battle, you're winning the battle. Does that mean the battle's smooth? Does that mean the battle is without resistance? Of course not. So I want to talk to you a little bit first about what is ownership. We're going to go into why ownership's important. And then we're going to go down the list here and uncover some things that I think are pivotal in our battle and in our effort to consider ourselves having won the battle. So the one and only today. What's ownership? So obviously it's possession, taking possession of something, to have in one's possession, to take responsibility for, to steward over. There's many other definitions, but these are three that I wanted to address. But what is ownership to you? It is getting up in the morning and taking responsibility of your day, starting correctly, of starting out your day either in the word, in physical training, in some sort of meditation, even. I believe it sets the foundation for the rest of your day. And if we don't take ownership of those first few minutes or that first hour of the day, guess what? We're going to be forced to take ownership of the ramifications of preparing poorly or the consequences of not laying a proper framework. So that's what I consider ownership. Ownership being a steward of yourself, your family, the resources you've been given, the blessings and gifts God's instilled within you. Uh, those require ownership in order to develop them. We can't develop something within us if we're not taking that responsibility of making it better. I get up every morning, I do a physical workout, and it is in my garage. So in the summer times in South Texas, it's not overly pleasant, suffice it to say. And it requires taking ownership of the process that is maintaining my physical strength and capability to be a protector, a provider, to be able to perform various tasks throughout the household that maybe only I can perform. And so I have to take ownership of that. There's a calling. It's a charge that I've been given, that I believe God has granted me the ability to be a steward over a home and a protector in a way physically that requires me to invest in that process. So that's ownership in my life. What's ownership in yours? Is it sowing right seeds in your relationships? Is it investing and being present in the moment with your children? At your job, are you working as unto the Lord? Or are you working as unto a boss that you really can't stand, or a company culture that you really can't get on board with? It's hard to own those situations, but we absolutely have to, or someone else is driving the bus. If we relinquish that ownership, I believe we're forfeiting the right to complain or to really have an opinion in a negative way about something, and we're forfeiting our ability to really influence those moments, to have impact in people's lives, or into a purpose. We actually allow someone to write our narrative if we're not taking ownership. So that's what ownership. It's a big stewardship component, I believe, and it's biblical, of course. But the responsibility that we can either forfeit or we can willingly accept. That's up to us, and that's the great thing about living in this country, is we have the choice. So you can choose to make a pros and con list of your items which you choose to own and make those convenient, or you can make those just all encompassing. And I'm going to get into some of that later. But as we move down the line here, why ownership? Talked a little bit about it, but why is ownership important? Why? Well, I mean, it can ultimately define our character. I believe our integrity is based a lot on what we choose to own. And if we choose not to own something that is rightly ours to take possession of, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, professionally, financially, whatever, physically, if we just kind of pass the buck or sit on the sideline, we have effectively opted out, and we've effectively taken the apathetic, spineless approach. And I believe, why we take ownership of something is because we're setting an example for the people that we steward over, the people we lead. That example cannot be a sliding scale of situational ethics. So whatever works for me, I'm going to go ahead and own that. And then if it doesn't, then there's plenty of people to blame, or plenty of people to defer to. So, ownership is a sense of obligation, a sense of duty. It's a healthy kind of pride. Nothing wrong with the pride that says, I'm standing up for this. I'm standing in the gap for people who don't take ownership, because look around you. That person at the red stoplight probably is passing the buck on something in their life. They're probably failing to rise up as a leader, as a man of character, and take ownership. So that's your job. If you want to be a man that's got some backbone, some intestinal fortitude, some resilience, some traits that reflect the character of the Christ that sacrificed his life for you, and a God that made all this, that's your calling. That's a healthy pride to stand up and say, you know what, I got this. I'm going to take ownership. I mean, that doesn't mean that we're just all encompassing of self-made and this is our ride and we're going to take control of everything and everybody, and we're going to pee all over our territory, and we're going to stand up and impose our domineering will on people. It's not what I'm talking about, but ownership's important because there is a pride component to that. There's an obligation and a duty as men to win the battle because we've owned the battle. So, I think the what and the why are important. Why ownership? What is ownership? Like, I think those are important. So now you start building up, right? We poured the slab, we're building out here. We've got a framework. Now we're going to build up. Okay. We're going to build a structure here that convinces you, if you're on the fence, convinces you that ownership is in your wheelhouse. That's the lens you should be looking through, is one of ownership. Again, we're talking about one and only. One, WON, only, OWNLY. So we're one and only here. But you know what? I can't help but state the obvious. We've got a lot of renters with the option to buy out there. We've got a lot of people who are renting to own, which by definition, in my opinion, says we're testing the waters, we're kicking the tires on this ownership thing, and we're going to do what feels right in the moment. And man, if we hit some resistance, or we hit some opposition, we're gonna pump the brakes. We don't necessarily have to own that because it wasn't easy. So you know what? I'm going to rent this until I feel like I should own it, and then I'll feel like I should own it when it's easy and when it benefits me. Man, do we have? Am I preaching to the choir right now? Because you're out there nodding your head right now because it's all over the place. All you have to do, it's a thumb click away on your social media, and you can see how many people are pointing fingers, how many people are not willing to own up. The blame is literally deflecting off of people. And it's common. It's becoming you talk about a pandemic, the epidemic of passing the blame and refusing to take ownership is out there. Unfortunately, there's not a vaccination for that. It just takes a little spine and a little fortitude for men to stand up and say, you know what, I screwed up. I'll own it though, and I won't do it again. I can bet you I won't make that same mistake. Man, if we only had a few more of those kind of people that just raised their hand and said, yeah, I screwed that up, but I can guarantee it won't happen again. So, we got a lot of renters with the option of owning out there. We got a lot of people that are, if there's nothing to gain in it for them, I think they'll continue to rent. We'll lease this whole arrangement. We'll lease my character. I'm gonna lease this. I'm gonna maybe buy it, but probably not because it just doesn't feel right. It's not what's in it for me to do that. And I'm gonna tell you, if life is not about what's in it for you. Life's about really a lot of friction. Life's about heat. It's about opposition. It's about resistance. It's about all those things that make life a little bit more upstream than we would comfortably like it to be. But it is. And there's no change in that. So the quicker we rise up and stand in the face of it, and we're owning a situation at work, you did something that maybe wasn't exactly the right way to do it. But man, it was going to mean maybe, an extra couple of $100 on your bonus check. That's not really owning it. That's really just kind of doing what's in it for you and what feels right and benefits you only. But we own, until we don't. That's a lot of those renters to own. We own until we just are like, we quit. Quitters are everywhere. So, I guess I can't beat a dead horse really on this, but rent to own, you get what that is. It's with the intent of never really considering to be an owner. You just want to lease a situation. So there's a lot of that out there. What I like to call, what we need more of is those who own in stone. So our ownership is unwavering. Okay. We don't negotiate these certain things about taking ownership of our lives, about taking ownership of our physical health, our relational health, our spiritual health. You'd be amazed. And I know a lot of you out there are Christians that listen to this, but if you're not, or somebody that isn't, you'd be amazed at what a vacancy there is in the spiritual beings all around us. People either don't acknowledge or don't know that we are spiritual beings, or that they just ignore the fact, because that ownership takes effort. That ownership tells us what we can't do, right? If we're locked into a spiritual mindset and a spiritual way of life, and God is our God and Christ is our Savior, the false narrative is that we get told no a lot. We can't do a lot of things if we own up to that way of life. Man, it's such a better way of life. I've done it from both sides of the fence. I've done it on both sides of Jesus, let's just say. I've done it before knowing who that was and what that life meant. I've done it that way, and I've done it with Jesus. I've done it seeking him in all things. And the peace surpasses all understanding on the right side of Jesus. And I'll just tell you, and I'm not going to get on a preach, get in the pulpit here on you, but I will say I've done it both ways, and I'm living proof that without him is absolutely void. and there's a huge vacancy there. But back to this own in stone, like, if we could ever just put it in permanent marker, write down what you choose to take ownership of. And circumstances are going to come at you, so it's hard to predict where you're going to need to do that. But there are aspects of your life, there are categories that are just built in to the fabric of your everyday life. And you can make the choice to own that and to make that in stone where it doesn't move, right? We're not building this ownership component on sand. We're building it on solid foundation, bedrock of our faith in Christ, and a bedrock in me as a man stepping up into this role of masculinity and what it really looks like, not what society says it looks like, but trying to create a new cultural narrative. And if enough of us do that, if enough of us own things, own our mistakes, if we own our responsibilities and what we're called to steward over, can you imagine what culture would look like? Can you imagine what this whole narrative would sound like in the story of just the American society, what it could possibly positively become? And, there's a no return policy when you own in stone. There's a no return policy. You don't get to keep the receipt on your manhood or your masculinity or your responsibility or your role and duty and obligation to own something, to own your role as a parent in disciplining your child, to own your role as a husband in being faithful to your wife and investing in her daily. There's no receipt on this. You don't get to wake up today with a sniffly nose and a sore throat and redeem a coupon that says, I don't get to own anything today because I don't feel like it. You're the man. Even if you don't have a man in the home, you're the leader of the home. If you're that person, step up, rise up. Again, you've got a strength inside you that God's put there. We're not called to hold on to the receipt and redeem the coupon if we don't like something or we want a cheaper price for our character. Our character and integrity don't come at a discount. We don't get to redeem coupons for it when it feels easy. Secondly, there's no plan B on this own in stone. Okay. Number 2 is there's no plan B. The backup plan is a hall pass for evacuation. Your backup plan gives you a hall pass to pull the ripcord early, to leave, to flee, tuck your tail, dig a hole, and just absolutely deny every calling and responsibility and duty you have as a leader, as a man specifically. So don't create a plan B here. Ownership doesn't have it's not a 1 and a 1A. It's not a 1 and a B, an A and a B. It's a plan A, ownership, non-negotiable. If I own who I am at my job, if I own what I represent from my family, from the leader of my home and my kids and my wife, if I own that and there's nothing that blows that off of baseline, then I don't need a plan B in this regard. Am I saying don't have a plan B for any situation in your life? Absolutely not. Come on now. You know what I'm saying? There's certain things in your life when it comes to your character and your resilience and your leadership that just don't have an opt-out clause in that contract. Don't give yourself a hall pass for evac with some backup plan that says, I'll defer to my wife. If we don't pay our mortgage, I'll just blame it on her because she handles the checkbook. Or she didn't tell me that the budget had a new line item, so why are we short here? No, we don't defer. We don't have a backup plan on who we blame. We don't have a backup plan on who we give ownership to. It's ours. So own it. One and only. The battle to be won is a battle that has to be owned. And we're in a battle every day. And if you don't acknowledge that or even believe that wholeheartedly, you might just be behind the eight ball. You might just be that snowball rolling downhill like it's headed for hell, because you're just a matter of time from something catastrophic and devastating in your life, because you A, took a back seat, and because B, you didn't really believe that there's a battle, and then you got blindsided. How many boxers get in the ring and just believe that they're not in a fight? Come on. Your life is your ring, and you're in a battle. You're in a fight every day with an enemy, a spiritual enemy. I mean, you're in a fight with really just anything that resists or opposes your character, your faith, who you are as leader. There is opposition, so we're in a battle. There's no doubt. Don't have a plan B. All right. Don't carry your bag on the golf course with a rescue club in it. Everybody uses a rescue club now because they can't hit the real stuff. Right? And I haven't played golf in a long time, but I'll tell you right now, I didn't ever have a rescue club. You don't need a rescue club for your ownership. To win the battle, you got to own the battle. All right. So now let's wrap this up a little bit here. How do we own it? Seems pretty straightforward. After everything I've talked about, it seems like you probably have come up with some answers to this. And I would bet that you've got something rubbing your spirit, kind of that pit in your stomach of a place in your life where you feel like you could be a better owner, and that you're more of a renter right now, leasing to buy, possibly kicking the tires. If that pit's in your stomach, that's good. That means you actually care. And that means you actually want to hear what somebody else has to say to get better. Not that I have all the answers. In fact, I would probably say that most of this talk today is using my own life examples where I've done it wrong. Because let's face it, man, certain days we just want it to be easier. And I've done that. So where I should rise up as an owner in a relationship or in a circumstance in my life, I have, because it was easy, deferred that ownership, just kind of sat back. Someone else will do it. We have that mentality. We have that mentality in sporting events. You know, if you ever coached little league or kids sports, I mean, you've got those really good players, that 80-20 rule, right? The top 20% do 80 most of the contributing to the victory or to the productivity of the team. But you've got that lower 80% that are sitting back going, well, he'll probably take care of that. I mean, I don't need to do my part because we've got enough good players that, man, I can just kind of ride coattails. Yeah, if you're sitting there with a pit in your stomach, you've been riding coattails for too long. And I've done it too. So, hey, we're not perfect, right? It's all about progressive. It's all about progress, not perfection. So how do we own it? What, I guess, pragmatically, how does this look? Well, let me give you a couple things. There's a ton. There's a lot of them. But I mean, it's got to start right now with humility. It's got to start with getting humble in your heart, in your spirit, renewing your mind to think differently. You may even have to go and ask forgiveness. Like if you're really and truly, if you're in the middle of a mistake or a failure, a setback, I mean, you might need to ask forgiveness. So that takes humility. There's a level of meekness as well. Meekness is just the ability to stay under control, powerful, without having to be so overbearing. There's a level of that with humility. But if you got to ask forgiveness, go do it, get it out of the way. It's just poison you're carrying around that, if you're just waiting for that person to reach out to you and forgive you for something, or someone to just overlook what you've done or what you haven't done, that's a mistake. And that just drags out this whole ownership thing. I mean, we'll never grow if we don't address it. We don't get in the face of it. Secondly, I would say examine yourself. Look within, look in the mirror, take a long, hard look, and, decide what you want. Decide if you want to really be this masculine guy, this leader, this man that God called you to be. I mean, if you want to reflect the person of Jesus, who was all things to all people, strength. He was tender, he was tough, he was all things. But if we want to be as close to the reflection of that as possible, we got to look within and say, where are the gaps? Where are the vacancies? Where's the void? A lot of times it's about taking responsibility, taking ownership, understanding your level of stewardship and the strength behind that and the power with accepting that duty and examining yourself. You maybe not going to like what you see for a minute, but I would say the only way to grow through it is to get in front of it, addressing it. So evaluating yourselves, examining yourself, right? Where can I get better? How can I be a better owner of my situation, my life, my leadership? I think there's some things that you will uncover if you're honest. And then finally, serve for reparations. We can restore anything. We can repair anything. Any damage that's been done, we can absolutely be the remedy for what we've done. We can absolutely, but we've got to serve others. We've got to make it about something bigger than ourselves. We got to make it about other people. And once you've humbled yourself and gotten forgiven, and once you've addressed within you the areas of growth and the areas you're falling short, and then you've taken responsibility for those, then you start to serve and look beyond your own situation. You start to own more things that are difficult. When you know it's for the betterment of someone else or a bigger purpose than you, a bigger plan or a story that's being written beyond just your four walls of your home, when you grab onto that, owning the difficult things and really being resilient in those moments becomes easier. Actually, maybe it doesn't become easier, but it becomes less negotiable within yourself. It becomes a obvious default mechanism within you to stand and fight, to walk through it, to persevere, to push through, lean in. It becomes, that's how you repair the wake that you've left behind in the past when you've not owned the process. You've not owned your journey. Your story's being told by somebody else because you're not man enough to stand up and own it. When you serve beyond you, those reparations come. So I will say, own the battle and you will have won the battle. Until next time.